hardly know I'm here also. I want to start by reading you the first lines of poetry that I read of Glover's. And then I want to move directly from that into the most recent lines I read of his. The first lines are from a poem, The Giant, from down at the Santa Fe Depot, which if you don't have it, go try and find it and good luck. It's amazing. When I step, my heel sputters with what's pinned under it, and I can't help imagining the thousands of mouths paying out blood and the stunned faces. And though I've observed things from these heights, when the right time comes, I'll move into a world below where things can be touched, tasted, heard, and try to be as solid as a house, strong as a horse, white blazings on the throat, at least in vivid, dream-fueled reveries, but finally, only a mortal, aging man. Those are two poems. What is the distance of years between those two poems? Quite a few. At least for me, when I first read those, the first lines, that was 20 years ago. His work continuously takes us from the heights of the observational ledge down to the fully realized, fully lived place his speaker inhabits. And this looking down is not a looking down in the sense that he's looking down on us, the reader. In a way, and bear with me, he's looking into the image, the thing, to find a way of explaining and understanding his place in the world. I find it miraculous that both The Giant and the later poem, Above It All, exhibit Davis's propensity for looking and building a realization upon and around that looking. His poems are honest. They begin with an image or a vignette, travel through memory, wrap themselves around superb, exacting detail, and address aging, loss, the possibility of new beginnings after that deep loss, and utilize mythology, traditional forms, rhyme, and yes, he has the guts to use it, and he uses it well. To tell us that we are not alone in this effort to understand. And isn't that what poetry is all about? He is Professor Emeritus of Creative Writing at San Diego State University, and his many books of poetry include his most recent here, My Cap of Darkness, as well as Bandaging Bread, August Fires, Legend, Separate Lives, and Spring Drive. He studied under Philip Levine here at Fresno State and Donald Justice at the Iowa Writers Workshop. If possible, I'd like to place a request.
Sure.
Okay. Fresno's Underground Gardens, can you do that?
Who's going to read it?
Fantastic. So please join me in welcoming back to Fresno and to this podium tonight, the poet Glover Davis.
Thank you for that. I'd like to thank you for having me here, English department, Connie, Jefferson, and all of you. I'm from here. I studied poetry here, and we had great teachers when I was a student. Philip Levine, of course, and Pete Everwine, Bob Mezzi, and a lot of good poets have come from here. The first poem I'm going to read is kind of a memorial. I wanted to write one about Phil Levine, but that's very big for me, and I kept thinking it wasn't good enough. This is for John Weinberg, and it's called Remember John. I was a playground leader at Holmes Playground, and I met John wandering across those fields. Remember John. Remember how we crossed the infield with adolescent friends when Thule fogs obscured the playing fields. There would be Lance Olson, the DeRoyan brothers, and others laughing and shoving each other. You could hear them clear across the fields before at last they would emerge from the gray mist, their breath pluming in front of them, and John appeared among them, bundled up in his peacoat, feisty, ducking some punches, jabbing the air. Part 2. Imagine John in a white cubicle, reviewing files before his next client, some hurt kid who would tentatively sit in front of him like a trapped animal, afraid, talking non-stop, eyes everywhere, or else defiant, sealed in a stone-like silence till John elicited laughter, and finally a discussion of some lost purpose, abysmal conditions obscured. Whatever anyone had done, John claimed he did something equivalent or worse. Recall how John would eat, drink, stay up late with us, turn up the volume on a jazz recording, showing how this music might exhibit parallels to the prosodies we sometimes would defend or deconstruct halfway through the night or until gray dawn appeared. What now remains are John's inked syllables in limited editions. A reader might thumb through on a hot day within the cool shade cast by a fig garden elm, and hear as if by chance a voice risen from the page, not wondering how John's body, slim as it was, made such resonant lines when his heart beat like the wings of hummingbirds and spilled such iridescent colors on a page. We will never hear again a voice like John's emerging from the mists of Thule fogs, revealing fields on a cold winter day. My wife, who's a tremendous editor, wrote the press release for this book, in which she discusses the narrative arc and the classical themes here. The first poem, the title poem, My Cap of Darkness, is influenced by Ovid, its Metamorphosis, the Requiem Mass, and I'm also thinking of John Donne's Holy Sonnet, at the rounders, imagine corners, blow your trumpets, angels, and arise, arise from death, you numberless infinitudes. I'm not sure infinitudes is that. My Cap of Darkness is a football helmet. I played football. And your mind could go dark pretty quickly if you keep doing that. I quit at just the right time. My Cap of Darkness. A photo in a yearbook catches me as I lean nonchalantly on a green bleacher, not posing, cradling a helmet, paint streaked from collisions with running backs. And I remember how on several occasions the whole world went dark for me as our heads butted with a crack, gold lights twinkling on the black velvet of the sky. For a moment, this helmet was a cap of darkness without the capabilities Perseus possessed, letting him move unseen among various enemies. If I could move invisibly among those who discuss my life, my work, I would unsheathe a head whose serpentine locks hiss and strike the air above my trembling hand, turning to stone the minds of those who think they see my inner darknesses, where gaps of deprivation yawn, widening as they watch. Part 2. O day of anger, when eyelids must fall like curtains rippling down, and the vague spot at the back of my skull where a vein blew apart no longer buzzes, when the low pressures elicit thunderheads and bolts, riving the clouds with their white, jagged scars. Then I will feel my cap of darkness pull too tightly down, and I won't see or move loose among the crowds on boulevards, malls, parking lots, wherever my countrymen would gather. And I'll know the time is near when I won't hear spadefuls of dirt drummed down on a wood lid lock just above my head. Part 3. Then sleep until the day gold trumpets blare, hoping you will feel then your bones recoat with skin and some fresh blood flow through your veins, somehow reconstituted as loose dirt drifts from your hair and shoulders, everything suddenly bright, pure air in your new lungs. Then rip your cap of darkness loose and stand, waiting with muscular ease for what must come. Perseus had this cap that made him invisible, and he used it to come up on the Gorgon, who, if you looked at her, turned you to stone, and cut her head off and carried it around the sack. Hooray for Perseus. The next poem was called Hyperostosis. I have this condition where I get too much bones. I get bone spurs, a lot of bone spurs. It's hyperostosis. It's inherited. There's no cure for it. Bone spurs were forming up and down his spine. He could no longer bend way down to pick up litter in his yard, or lace his shoes, or easily swivel his neck left or right. His vertebrae were casing themselves in bone, as though his skeleton inherited armor to ward off life's inevitable blows. Some Celtic ancestors too often bore the shock of battle car collisions, axe against helm, shield, or leather casing thighs. Somehow, over time, they printed in their genes compensatory templates, which became a malady descendants must endure. An X-ray photo shows a white haze spread from bones around his neck and down his back. Oh, let this man now move more fluidly in his stiff cage of bones, remembering how he once was agile as a dancing bear, and let him have his cap of darkness, so he can move invisibly among all those who thought he would be ineffectual because of sorrow, age, and this disease, the Gorgon, which would paralyze him now. Medusa was the one that Perseus' head cut off. James Welch was a Blackfoot American Indian poet and writer. He's a tremendous guy. We were drinking very much, and we were on the kitchen floor of a friend's house, and I said, show me how you can have the powers of the bear, like my totem animal, supposedly. Bear song. James Welch and I were very drunk. He got down on all fours, chanting a Blackfoot brown bear song. Wind nudged the kitchen doors. Dizzily we swayed on the rough tiles, reddening beneath our knees, and did not see the moon's effects glowing through the banked trees. We grunted, rolling our bleared eyes, glancing at our bare arms, as though a thick fur sprouted there, invoked by magic charms. Bare teeth and claws, threaded by chains, formations of firebirds painted on Jim's sports shirt, the smoke of sweet grass mixed with words. The family cat pushed through and stopped. His fur stood up like quills, and then he streaked through the backyard on grass where the moon spills herself continuously through a bodice's ripped silk, black against a bare white skin. Some spots seemed drenched with milk. That cat really believed. He did. I'm married to a woman now who's a terrific editor, helped me with this book, and a cook and everything, good writer, good poet. But previously I was married to a woman who died of lung cancer. Pain of watching it take her apart was not almost, it was almost unendurable. But this is about her. It's called Her Ruined Dress. Our son sent me a photo of my late wife, taken just before her final course of chemo, whose chemicals would lacerate her beauty once again. But in these terse moments she smiles. Some of her lustrous hair has grown back. The pain flickering in her eyes has become a candle sputtering for air. Oh, let time's regulating heartbeat freeze on moments such as these, before harsh scenes etched in our memories by our own grief's pain return again. And we must watch morphine's effects yellowing her skin with its pale stain, darkening day by day until the end, when her skin's a ruined dress nothing can mend. My late wife's clothes. There's a faint odor of her skin on bright cloth she cut, stitched, and wore against the sun like primordial emblems of the beautiful. If only a strong wind would fill these clothes, I'd stand out in the cold, and once again I would admire the gently curving hips and the black straps resting on shoulders where my hands would light like falcons on a perch. I'd cup them in both hands and gently pull her toward me, lips lingering on fragrant skin. I touch a sweater red as blood, which I once wrapped in tissue, placed beneath a tree she decorated with strung tinsel, bulbs, gold angels with our names engraved on wings. I want to shut the door and leave this room, do anything but bundle up her clothes. Terminalia was a Roman feast day for the god Terminus, who was a god of the ending of things. Terminalia. O God, we're animals bearing this gift of tongues, thinking and dreaming, knowing more than we should, bodies faltering year by year, some new event erupting like a sore. And though the syllables our mouths have shaped could snare its essence with a perfect name, this act would temporarily end our powers, leaving the tribulation much the same. And when the relevant discovery comes at last, it comes too late for most of us, struggling through roughened currents which our lives provide until we reach pale terminus. Palmer Hall was the editor of the Pecan Grove Press and a poet, and he had lung cancer. And we were giving a reading together, and he insisted on going on because that's what he does. And the poem's called Virtue. And for the Romans, virtue was synonymous with courage. That meant the same thing. Virtue for Palmer Hall. Leave it all on the field, our football coach once said, our cleats clicking on the cement, locker room floor before we trotted out onto a field chalked line beneath the ranked floodlights where huge moss budded the hot spheres. Tonight, the field for Palmer is a room reserved for readings, rows of folding chairs packed with colleagues who seem to focus all their listening energies on this man's words, his poems and essays, as he stands and speaks into a microphone, fighting the urge to sway and tremble with his afflictions. Such fortitude is what the Romans call virtue, taking it from their word for man. His right hand shaking just a little, he stills it by an effort of his will and sounds out syllables as though they are the notes inked on a score, which is his life tonight, excuse me, and always. Let us remember how he stands, bracing his voice against the malign wind. Excuse me, I better have some water here. I was really moved by his courage. Okay, let me see, what's the next? An old man in sunlight, sitting in the sunlight, falling asleep. He dreams of ink blots swirling on the blue. Murders of crows go caw, caw as they sweep down black flags folding, some of them askew. These semaphores have jolted him awake. Rising, he curses them back into flight, raucous complaints issuing from every beak. Splash syllables and feathers streak the white air black, making it seem as though this were just one more canvas of those things stretched across his memory. So let him blur and sleep, whatever hurtful scenes have etched their fluent lines, as though a human brain were copper, stone, paper with a flock gray. My first job was in a bakery in Felton, California, over on the coast above Santa Cruz. Excuse me a minute.
We have toxic air.
We have what?
The air here is toxic.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe I think I brought it from Texas, where everybody gets these allergies from cedar. I love it there, but that's...
Welcome home.
Yeah, thank you. It's toxic here, too. Okay. Wayne Thiebaud is a contemporary painter I really like. He has these paintings of cakes. Wayne Thiebaud's cakes bear frostings red, tan, yellow, white, or green. And the brush strokes are not more evident than swirling textures bakers would have squeezed from decorating tubes onto moist decks. Another painting has depicted cakes halved and their intersections lined with dark chocolate, but yellow as stucco in between. I might slice through such decorated shapes without regard for what Thiebaud has done, appropriating pleasure of taste to sight. There was a huge sheet cake two of us slid into the back of Lyle's old panel truck. He had mixed food dyes with whipped cream, squirted them onto a rough template of a bride and groom. He printed letters, birds, bright numerals. He stepped back sighing, cocked his head, then made some tiny changes, and the whole 2 yards of cake became a vivid rough tableau. Driving downhill, we hit a bump, and the cake split as though a fissure from a quake on a snowfield decapitated bride and groom and smudged red icing on a bird. A line of text had broken from his beak. I stared at the disaster right behind us as Lyle said, "It'll be okay," and took out his containers of whipped cream, his box of implements, redrew the heads of bride and groom, smoothed fissures with his spatula. If Lyle saw Thiebaud's paintings, he might say, "At least my cakes are real." And few could blame this baker with all his practical skills. But much of what we liked about Lyle's cakes was their adornment, figures, colors, text, demolished in a minute by our forks. Didn't seem very funny at the time, but it's okay. The next poem is called Fresno's Underground Gardens. I had Italian in-law who would walk over there on Sunday from C Street, which is now under Highway 99. But they'd walk over there and they would dig. They would help Baldassare Forestier dig his underground garden. Fresno's underground gardens. We have some water first.
And get closer to the microphone.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
I'll
Maybe,
make it fun.
maybe it's down here too far. Okay. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Why didn't anyone tell me that earlier? I was the worst electronic technician in the history of the Navy. I was. Fresno's underground. Wow, that's much better. Thank you. Fresno's underground gardens. On Sundays, men from C Street strolled across a baked dirt hard pan running down 5 feet beneath it. They would descend into the earth, down the steps Baldassare cut from stones. They'd tug a bell rope, and he'd scuttle down a tunnel and appear on changing gates, so these Italian laborers could work with him a while and drink some wine, play cards in a plaza still shaded by his trees, whose branches poked through a dome carved from rock and shaped so that he'd circle through the hole where oranges, grapefruits, lemons dot the blue. They worked in the San Joaquin Valley's heat, trenching for new gas lines, or putting up telephone poles they'd soaked in creosote for days so that corrosive oils would coat their gloves and burn the soft skin under eyes when one or two of them forgot and wiped away the sweat coursing in runnels down their faces, chests, and backs. Blue work shirts damp. Antonio Maggiore, Joe Maduano would rest in these cool depths, arms coiled like steel wire-braided cable when they reached across the rock slab table for more bread and wine. And you might see them ranged on either side of Baldassare in black-white photos, superimposed on photos tacked up near the entrance to this place, where briefly he presides like Pluton in this underworld. Oh, let these men return in the springtime, when the earth's fecund powers assert themselves, pushing all manner of living things through crusts broken into the light and vivid air. Beneath the mission walls, this is a mission at San Luis Obispo. There used to be, I read, 360,000 grizzly bears in California. And they would come to this creek below the mission and dig for roots. Spaniards reduced their population quickly. Beneath the mission walls. I love the thick adobe walls, the red tile floors, roughened by years of sandals, shoes, boots shuffling over them, and the enclosed courtyard where flowers planted in squares and circles suggest an influence of Spain's Arab architects who built in fluid stone gorgeous geometries of eternity. Year after year, returning to this place, I dig through memory beneath these walls, as though my shambling presence, bulked by age could find some nourishing substance here where my mother, aunts, and uncles knelt beneath a choir loft braced by large, rough-hewn beams. I stand where Spanish archers must have stood before they shot their bolts into the fur of grizzlies digging for the sweet white roots which once grew just beneath the bank's black earth. The auto de fe was a terrible thing. The Spanish Inquisition tied people to stakes, heretics, and burned them. And I don't prove that at all, but it's an image of my anger for people who don't believe in climate change. And so this is called my auto de fe. The air is smoke. Highways are metal. They glitter with a carapace of cars and trucks, lines of beetles inching forward. Though stubble is gold, the earth darkens where someone flicked a cigarette from a car window. And yet somehow this flame-lit land of ours endures another season, though it needs rain, rain, and more rain. Drive this landscape sealed behind auto safety glass, and parched, eviscerated trees might seem as unreal as unbelievers staked for burning. My house in YLP had oaks, and they were dying, turning into paper, really. And so I wrote this poem called Revolt. If our oaks cough the way sick men cough, there'd be tiny dust clouds where folds in the bark make lips and where sap forms a crust. There'd be no syllables when stuck lips parted, and no tongue within to shape the sounds a tree might make, unless winds stung branches lash and sing, some torn loose, littering the ground. But let one oak lean forward, snap white rootlets all around, step tentatively like a child learning how to walk, its tall trunk tottering, a place for saws marked with blue chalk. This might signal the trees revolt against our ordinances as the parched leaves articulate in flames their grievances. Song for renewal. After 4 years of drought, rain comes at last, ticking on the skyline, washing the dusty, half-dead oaks and the interminable light. Grasses on my hillside are gold, sluicing their dust the boulders gleam. Because of this, spring flowers may sprout again beside our dried up stream. Let water gently flow downstream. The mule deer bend to drink once more, but moderate rain's turbulence. All manner of living things restore. and this book is dedicated to her. We will return, my love, to this small town, where the Alsatian houses glow pale blue or white, with metal roofs which slope down toward fenced-in plots, crammed with vines, wild grasses, flowers riding against some weathered planks. There are blue bonnets and red poppies cupping flames, and cell phone photographs you took the day I posed against the splotched raw colors there. I would have picked a red bouquet for you, but a dog lurking near waited for one of us to touch his planks, where blossoms scored the wood like painted notes on blown parchment. No Irish monk would emulate these staves for any illuminated manuscript, but loving their rough textures, I would play them, wondering what wild music I could spill on the air, and if they might give us a song like a tune plucked from an Aeolian harp, wind in the strings, wind in your wheat blonde hair. This next poem, in fact, a lot of these poems were influenced by teachers in the classic department here who let me audit their courses. This is called the Neoteric Poets, of the great Roman poets. But first, an epigram from Alexander Pope. If Nero could make his ass a consul of Rome, why should we be surprised with the president we have now? I added my own line. The Neoteric Poets. When power-drunk generals decided things, they massed their cohorts in a city square. Anyone trying to stop them could be proscribed. You'd see his head impaled on an iron spike. And this is how they murdered Cicero. The Republic died forever on that day. The unnamed emperor might take his seat with other senators, but they all knew wherever he might sit would be a throne. Because of this, the Neoteric poets retreated to their gardens. There would be few patriotic poems, no epics, till Virgil composed the Aeneid despite himself, but instructed his heirs to burn it when he died. Virgil, Propertius, Horace, and Catullus all believed they should concentrate on details. Keep your sheep fat and your lines thin. We are so much like them, carding our lives for things we'd weave like wool into the lines we station on a page. Disgusted by our governments puerile and corrupt, we will concern ourselves with little things surrounding us in the green shadows, moist from wandering, like the blossoms just beyond us, in patches of light swaying on their stems. One more poem, the final poem of the book, Above It All. The point of view is up from my house in Waialpi, looking down into the valley. Above it all. Mist rise from my front meadow, where the oak branches obscure whatever lies far down these hills, in the flat valley where the truck lights blurring spread their cotton on the air. Whirring down 99 like freight trains run off broken tracks, they suddenly appear as ghost trains, sometimes ramming slower cars. You can hear whirlwinds their power generates before they pass you like something right out of hell, these burnished battle cars with sides, death ends, doors pinstriped with Confederate flags. So I'll stay home until the sun burns through and perch like an eagle up above it all in my hilltop home, where the air remains pure and I can look down for miles and miles. When the sun comes out at last, the lit cars flare and disappears as they race toward the coast. But from my vantage point, I nod above my yellow legal pads, and clouds of sleep puff from my mind as I try to wield my pen. I think of the Iliad and Mitchell's new translation, where the seasons gently strip gold bridles from the white horses of the sun, feeding and stabling them near Mount Ida as Lord Zeus reclines upon a cloud, ignoring blood-choked mouths, death-dusted eyes, and corpses piled up near the Scion gates. Though he naps now, he previously took pleasure from mingling, sometimes disguised, sometimes invisible, with mortals who must die, clattering to earth in gleaming armor, brains, chests, livers pierced with arrows, blades, spear points. He loved to toy with them, favoring one side and then the other, as a battle moiled across the beaches close to the black ships. And all the lesser gods were even more mischievous, like Hera, who would beg Aphrodite to help her seduce Zeus, distracting him when Hector needed help, and Poseidon, who rose from the sea to shake the earth and aid his faltering Argives. And even now, do similar powers sweep over and around us, invisible as the winds driving blue Pacific swells? Could they determine human destinies, altering our passages through time and space? Homer would think so. I don't want to know. And though I've observed things from these heights, when the right time comes, I'll move into a world below where things can be touched, tasted, heard, and try to be as solid as a house, strong as a horse, white blazings on the throat, at least in vivid dream-fueled reveries, but finally only a mortal aging man. Thank you.